Submechanophobia is a fear of submerged human-made objects, either partially or entirely underwater. Taphophobia is defined as the fear of being buried alive. This natural fear was both common and rational in the 19th century, when an American funeral director would sometimes mistakenly place a living person in a burial casket when they were pronounced dead. Algophobia is a phobia of pain, an abnormal and persistent fear of pain that is far more powerful than that of a normal person. Vehophobia is the fear of driving a motor vehicle. Amaxophobia, the fear of being in a vehicle. Ergophobia, going to work or anticipating going to work causes immense fear and anxiety. Physical symptoms of anxiety are likely to be present, such as shaking, sweating, fast heartbeat, dry mouth, difficulty concentrating, and breathing difficulties. Gelotophobia, fear of being laughed at. German psychotherapist and psychoanalyst Michael Tietze discovered that some of his patients seemed to be primarily worried about being laughed at. They tended to scan their environment for signs of laughter and ridicule. Globophobia is the fear of balloons. This phobia often includes extreme fear, anxiety, or panic at the thought, sight, sound, touch, and smell of balloons. However, in some people, globophobia only includes a fear of balloons popping, or specifically the sound of a balloon popping. Haphephobia is an intense, overwhelming fear of being touched. Many people don't like being touched by strangers, but haphephobia is significant distress over being touched by anyone, even family or friends. Koumpounophobia is the term used to describe the phobia of clothes buttons. It is estimated that less than 1% of the U.S. suffers from this phobia. Insectophobia is a specific phobia characterized by a fear or disgust of one or more classes of insect and classified as a phobia by the DSM-5. Pyrophobia is a fear of fire. Thalassophobia is the persistent and intense fear of deep bodies of water, such as the sea, oceans, or lakes. Anthropophobia is the former name for social anxiety disorder. Someone with social anxiety disorder might not feel anxious if they are in a crowd where no one knows them, but someone with anthropophobia feels anxious in any crowd. Atelophobia is an obsessive fear of imperfection. Someone with this condition is terrified of making mistakes. They tend to avoid any situation where they feel they won't succeed. Catoptrophobia, fear of mirrors that results in fear, anxiety, panic, and distress if they see a mirror, or think about seeing a mirror. Negative thoughts and feelings are likely to be further exacerbated if they see their own reflection in the mirror. Coulrophobia, the modern archetype of the evil clown, was popularized by the DC Comics supervillain Joker, starting in 1940, and again by Pennywise in Stephen King's It. The character can be seen as playing on the sense of unease felt by sufferers of coulrophobia, the fear of clowns. Acluophobia is an excessive and irrational fear of darkness or the night. Acousticophobia, a morbid fear of sounds including your own voice. Acrophobia, phobia of heights, especially when one is not particularly high up. It belongs to a category of specific phobias called spas. Aerophobia is an extreme fear of flying. Agyrophobia, fear of crossing streets, highways, and other thoroughfares. Aichmophobia is an intense fear of sharp objects like scissors, knives, needles, and pencils. Zoophobia is the fear of animals. You may develop zoophobia after a traumatic experience with animals. Alliumphobia is the fear of garlic. Androphobia, fear of men. For some people, even images of men bring on immediate phobia symptoms. Aquaphobia. People with aquaphobia have severe fear when they see or think about water. They may be afraid of baths or showers, drinking water, large bodies of water, or swimming pools. Astraphobia is an intense fear of thunder and lightning. The phobia is more common in children, but it can last into adulthood. Atychiphobia is an intense fear of failure. Someone with this condition may be scared to try new things, take risks, or embrace growth for fear of failure. Mysophobia is an extreme fear of germs. It causes an overwhelming obsession with contamination. Cacophobia is an intense fear of ugliness, which is a type of anxiety disorder. People with cacophobia might be afraid of looking ugly themselves, or they might worry about seeing something they consider to be ugly. Chromophobia is an intense fear of colors. Most people with this disorder have an extreme aversion to one or two colors in particular, or they may only fear bright colors. Claustrophobia becomes a phobia when it interferes with your ability to function at work, school, or other daily activities. Common triggers include tunnels, elevators, trains, and airplanes. Coimetrophobia is the term for the abnormal and persistent fear of cemeteries. Coulrophobia, an abnormal and persistent fear of feces. Sufferers of coprophobia experience anxiety even though they realize their fear is irrational. They go out of their way to avoid coming into contact with feces or sometimes even seeing feces. Dendrophobia. Someone with dendrophobia may have extreme fear or anxiety when thinking about or seeing trees. They may stop walking outside or driving just to avoid trees. Dentophobia. Someone with dentophobia may have extreme anxiety at the thought of going to the dentist or while in the dentist's office. Anachluophobia is an irrational fear of crowds. A person with this phobia experiences high levels of anxiety when they're in a crowd, or just thinking about being in a crowd. Equinophobia is a fear of horses. A scary experience with a horse, such as falling off a horse or being stepped on, kicked, or bitten by a horse, may cause this phobia. You may also have a fear of donkeys, mules, and ponies. Erotophobia is a phobia or excessive and irrational fear of sex. Phrygophobia is defined as a persistent, abnormal, and unwarranted fear of coldness despite conscious understanding by the phobic individual and reassurance by others that there is no danger. Gypherophobia, an abnormal and persistent fear of crossing bridges. Sufferers of this phobia experience undue anxiety even though they realize their fear is irrational. Their fear may result partly from the fear of enclosure or the fear of heights. Glossophobia, fear of public speaking. In anticipation of speaking in public, a person with glossophobia can experience a dry mouth, weak voice, and uncontrollable body shaking. Hemophobia is the medical term used to describe an intense and irrational fear of blood. Generally speaking, phobias are extreme, often irrational fears that interfere with an individual's ability to function in their day-to-day lives. Hodophobia is an irrational fear or phobia of travel. Ichthyophobia is a persistent and irrational fear of fish. Individuals with ichthyophobia might fear seeing, smelling, touching, or eating fish. Lilapsophobia is an unhealthy fear of tornadoes or hurricanes. Somnophobia is the intense fear of sleep. People with this phobia may be afraid of having nightmares, experiencing sleep paralysis, or dying in their sleep. Often, people who have somnophobia try to avoid going to sleep for as long as possible. Noctophobia is an extreme, irrational, and overwhelming fear of the night. Nosocomophobia is an intense, overwhelming fear of hospitals. The condition is a specific phobia, which is similar to anxiety disorder. Many people are uncomfortable in hospitals. Nosophobia is when you have a persistent, irrational fear of contracting a chronic, often life-threatening disease like cancer or AIDS. Pediophobia is a fear of dolls or inanimate objects that look real, and pedophobia is a fear of actual children. Phasmophobia is the fear of ghosts in many human cultures is based on beliefs that some ghosts may be malevolent towards people and dangerous. Radiophobia is a fear of ionizing radiation. Examples include health patients refusing X-rays because they believe the radiation will kill them, such as Steve Jobs and Bob Marley, who both died after refusing radiation treatment for their cancer. Technophobia is an overwhelming fear of technology. People with technophobia may fear computers, cell phones, or the powers of artificial intelligence. It is most common in older adults and people who are generally anxious about the future. Telephone phobia is reluctance or fear of making or taking phone calls, literally fear of telephone. It is considered to be a type of social phobia or social anxiety. Thermophobia, an abnormal and persistent fear of heat, including hot weather and hot objects. Tomophobia refers to fear or anxiety caused by forthcoming surgical procedures and/or medical interventions. Traumatophobia, an abnormal fear of battle or war or being physically injured during activities like sports.